In April of 2018, hotel staff entered a guest room that should have been occupied. According to the hotel's reservation system, someone had checked in the previous afternoon. The room had never been checked out. The electronic key had never been used to leave. And yet, when housekeeping unlocked the door, no one was inside. No suitcase, no clothes, no wallet, no passport. Nothing that suggested anyone had ever stayed there, except a single smartphone. It rested perfectly in the center of the bed, connected to a charger. Its screen was already unlocked, as if someone had been using it only moments earlier. The phone contained no contacts, no text messages, no photographs, no browsing history. Only one audio recording. Its title was just 2 words: "Listen to me." The housekeeper later claimed that the recording described events that hadn't happened inside the hotel, but inside a small apartment hundreds of miles away. Events involving a man who insisted something had entered his home while his roommate was gone. The recording ended abruptly, and according to multiple employees, something inside room 312 changed the moment it stopped playing. By sunrise, one member of the hotel staff had resigned without notice. Several employees later refused to enter that room alone. Over the following months, room 312 was quietly removed from online booking more than once. The hotel never publicly explained why. The following reconstruction is based on witness testimony, internal staff statements, and the contents of the mysterious audio file that was reportedly recovered from the abandoned phone. Whether the recording documented a real incident or something far more difficult to explain has never been determined. This is the case of the phone found in room 312. The events described in this case reportedly began on April 17, 2018, at a mid-sized business hotel located just outside a large American city. It wasn't a luxury hotel, nor was it run down, the kind of place where business travelers stayed for a night or two before catching an early flight. Tourists occasionally booked rooms on weekends. Families stopped there during long road trips. It was clean, predictable, and according to former employees, almost painfully ordinary. Nothing unusual had ever happened there, at least not until room 312. One of the hotel's housekeepers, whom we'll call Megan Carter, had worked there for nearly 9 years. Co-workers described her as reliable, quiet, and almost obsessive about routine. She arrived at the same time every morning, pushed the same housekeeping cart through the same hallways, and cleaned each room in exactly the same order. She often joked that she could tell whether a guest was a business traveler or a vacationer just by looking at the way they left the bed. That Tuesday began no differently. By noon, Megan had already cleaned more than a dozen rooms, fresh towels, new linens, vacuumed carpets, disinfected bathrooms. Everything followed the same familiar rhythm. Shortly after 1 o'clock, she checked the digital housekeeping tablet clipped to her cart. Only one room remained unfinished. Room 312. It sat at the very end of the 3rd-floor hallway, separated from the other guest rooms by a narrow service corridor and an emergency exit that was rarely used. Several employees would later mention that the hallway always felt strangely quieter than the rest of the hotel, though none of them had ever thought much about it before that day. According to the hotel's reservation system, the room was occupied. A guest had checked in the previous afternoon for a 3-night stay. No checkout request had been submitted. Nothing unusual appeared in the reservation notes. Megan walked toward the door and knocked gently. "Housekeeping." She waited. No response. She knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. That wasn't unusual. Guests often left for meetings without hanging the "Please Service Room" sign outside. Following hotel procedure, she announced herself once more before using her master key. "Housekeeping, I'm coming in." The electronic lock clicked. She slowly opened the door. The first thing she noticed was the silence. Not ordinary silence. The kind that makes an empty room feel abandoned. This felt different, almost heavy, as though every sound inside the room had somehow been absorbed. She stepped inside. The air was noticeably colder than the hallway. Not freezing, just enough to make her pause. The room itself appeared immaculate. The bed was perfectly made. The pillows were aligned. The bathroom towels remained folded exactly as they had been placed before check-in. No suitcase rested near the luggage rack. No clothes hung inside the closet. No toiletries surrounded the sink. There wasn't a single indication that anyone had spent even 1 minute inside the room. Except, someone obviously had. The television remote had been moved. One bedside lamp was switched on, and directly in the center of the neatly made bed lay a smartphone. It was plugged into the wall charger. Its battery indicator showed 100%. The screen was already awake. Megan approached slowly. Normally, hotel policy required employees to avoid touching guests' personal belongings unless absolutely necessary. Her first instinct was to notify the front desk. Then she noticed something that immediately felt wrong. The phone wasn't displaying a home screen or a lock screen. Instead, one application was already open, an audio player. There was only one file. No music, no voicemail, no podcasts, nothing else, just a single recording. Its title read, "Listen to Me." Megan stared at the screen for several long seconds. She couldn't explain why she hesitated. Later, during an internal interview with hotel management, she reportedly said something unusual. It felt like the phone wasn't forgotten. It felt like it had been left there, waiting. She reached for it. The display never dimmed. The recording length appeared beneath the title. 18 minutes. Her thumb hovered over the play button. Part of her knew she should walk away and call the front desk. Instead, she sat carefully on the edge of the bed, took a slow breath and pressed play. For the first few seconds, there was no voice, only the faint sound of electrical interference, a low, constant hum, almost like an old recording that had been copied too many times. Megan frowned. She glanced toward the bathroom. The room remained perfectly still. Then, a man began speaking. His voice was calm, controlled, almost unnaturally composed. "My name is Andrew Carter." He paused. "If you're listening to this, something has already gone wrong." Another pause followed. "I've replayed everything that happened dozens of times, trying to convince myself I imagined it. I was exhausted. I'd had a few drinks. I kept telling myself my brain was filling in the blanks. But it wasn't. It was there." According to the recording, Andrew was 29 years old and lived in a small apartment outside Portland, Oregon, with a roommate named Ryan. The apartment wasn't remarkable. An old 3-story brick building, thin walls, a narrow hallway, creaking hardwood floors that made every late-night trip to the kitchen impossible to hide. The two men weren't close friends. They simply shared rent. Most evenings they barely spoke. Each kept to himself. Andrew explained that everything began on an ordinary Thursday night. He had worked late, stopped at a neighborhood bar on the way home. By the time he climbed the apartment stairs, he was exhausted, not drunk enough to lose his memory, just tired enough to want silence. He unlocked the apartment. The lights were off. The living room was empty, exactly as he expected. To fill the silence, he opened a random video on his phone. He admitted he never even watched it. He simply liked hearing another human voice while falling asleep on the couch. "I remember closing my eyes, just for a minute." The recording became quiet, almost as though Andrew himself were reliving the memory. Then he continued. "I woke up because I heard the front door. The apartment had become darker. Outside, rain tapped softly against the windows. He checked the time. A little after 1 in the morning. I heard Ryan come in. He described every detail with surprising certainty. Keys placed on the hallway table. A jacket sliding off. Shoes hitting the floor. The familiar footsteps moving toward the bathroom. Then, the shower turned on. Everything sounded completely normal. Too normal. Andrew smiled nervously during the recording. You know how there are sounds you stop noticing after living with someone? The way they close doors. The way they walk. The way they cough. I would have recognized Ryan anywhere. I would have bet my life it was him. He laughed once, a dry, uncomfortable laugh. I almost did. Several hours later, Andrew woke again. This time, the apartment was completely dark. His phone displayed 3:24 a.m. His head ached. His mouth felt dry. The shower was still running. He sat upright. At first, he assumed Ryan had fallen asleep in the bathroom after drinking. It wasn't impossible. Still, something about it felt wrong. No one stayed in the shower for over 2 hours. He walked toward Ryan's bedroom. The door was closed. He knocked. Ryan? No answer. He knocked again. Nothing. Only the endless sound of running water. Andrew reached for his phone and opened their text conversation. That's when he noticed a message he somehow hadn't seen earlier. 1:14 a.m. Working the night shift. Won't be home until morning. Andrew stared at the screen. He read the message again, then again. His heartbeat quickened. The timestamp was real. The message had been sent hours earlier, which meant Ryan had never come home. Andrew slowly lowered the phone. The shower was still running. Only now, he realized something else. Ryan's cell phone was lying on the kitchen counter, exactly where he had left it before work. Andrew whispered into the recording, I remember thinking, if Ryan never came home, then who walked through that front door? The recording fell silent. Only one sound remained. Water, still running, somewhere in the background. For several long seconds, the recording contained nothing but the steady sound of water. It wasn't loud. It wasn't distorted. It sounded perfectly ordinary, which somehow made it even more unsettling. Then Andrew spoke again. His breathing had changed. He was whispering now. I should have walked out. I know that. But once something stops making sense, you almost feel obligated to prove there's a logical explanation. According to his account, he slowly walked toward the bathroom. Every light in the apartment remained off except for the faint glow of the microwave clock in the kitchen. 3:24 a.m. The same time, over and over. He later admitted he never looked at the clock again. To this day, he couldn't explain why he believed it had stopped. The apartment felt different now. Not frightening. Not yet. Just wrong. The air seemed unusually heavy. The hallway felt narrower than he remembered. Even the sound of his own footsteps seemed strangely muted, as though the walls were absorbing every echo. He stopped outside the bathroom door. The shower continued running behind it. Steam drifted slowly beneath the narrow gap at the bottom. Too much steam. Far more than should have remained after hours. Andrew raised his hand. Knock, knock, knock. No answer. He tried again. Ryan? Silence. Only the water. Then, something scratched the inside of the door. Not a loud scrape. A slow, deliberate, dragging sound. like someone's fingernails moving across painted wood. Andrew froze. He listened. Nothing. Then, the scratching came again, longer this time. Starting near the floor, moving upward until it stopped at about eye level. Andrew later admitted that was the exact moment he realized whoever or whatever was inside had been standing directly on the other side of the door, listening, waiting. He slowly reached for the doorknob. His hand stopped halfway. Something else had caught his attention. The apartment had become completely silent. The shower had stopped. No water, no pipes, nothing. The sudden silence was almost painful. Andrew whispered into the recorder. I remember thinking, please don't let the door open. As if answering the thought, the doorknob turned, very slowly, not violently, not suddenly, almost carefully. The bathroom door eased open by only a few inches. Steam rolled quietly into the hallway, thick, white, dense enough that he couldn't immediately see inside. Andrew didn't move. Neither did whatever stood beyond the doorway. Several seconds passed. Then, he noticed a shape, not clearly, only a silhouette behind the steam, far taller than Ryan. Its shoulders were unnaturally narrow. Its arms seemed too long. It never stepped forward. It simply stood there, watching him. Andrew repeatedly insisted during the recording that he never saw a face. I don't know if it had one. I don't think I wanted to. The steam slowly began to thin, just enough for him to notice one impossible detail. The figure wasn't standing on the bathroom floor. Its feet never touched the ground. For a brief moment, it appeared suspended several inches above the tile, completely motionless. Andrew instinctively took one step backward. The figure copied him, not by moving, by appearing, one step closer. The distance between them had somehow become shorter, without either of them visibly crossing it. His pulse exploded. Every instinct screamed at him to run. Then the figure tilted its head slightly to one side. The movement looked almost curious, like someone studying a stranger for the first time. Andrew's voice became noticeably unstable. I still don't know how long we stood there. It could have been 5 seconds, or 5 minutes. I only remember one thing. It smiled. The recording abruptly filled with loud static. When the interference faded, Andrew was breathing hard. I never actually saw it move. But somehow, it wasn't standing in the bathroom anymore. It was standing inside the hallway. Andrew said the next few seconds were the hardest to remember, not because they happened too quickly, but because his mind refused to accept what his eyes were seeing. The hallway hadn't changed. The furniture was exactly where it had always been. The kitchen light was still off. The apartment door remained locked. Everything looked perfectly ordinary. Except, the figure was no longer standing inside the bathroom. It was standing halfway down the hallway. Closer. Much closer. I never saw it walk, Andrew said. I looked away for less than a second. And when I looked back, it wasn't where it had been. He insisted there had been no footsteps, no sound, no movement, only distance that somehow kept disappearing. Instinct finally took over. Andrew turned and ran, not toward the bathroom, toward the apartment door. His bare feet slammed against the hardwood floor as he fumbled for the deadbolt. His hands were shaking so violently that it took 3 attempts before the lock finally turned. Behind him, there was still complete silence. That frightened him more than anything. If someone had been chasing him, he would have heard footsteps, breathing, anything. Instead, there was nothing. He opened the door and stumbled into the apartment hallway. The motion-activated lights flickered on one by one above him. For the first time in several minutes, he felt as though he could breathe again. He didn't look back. He couldn't. He sprinted down 3 flights of stairs, nearly falling twice before bursting through the front entrance into the cold night air. Rain had started falling. The streets were empty. He kept running. 1 block, then another. Only after reaching a brightly lit gas station nearly half a mile away did he finally stop. His chest burned. His hands wouldn't stop trembling. The clerk inside later confirmed that Andrew appeared terrified, soaked from the rain, and repeatedly asked to use the store phone. "I think someone's still inside my apartment," he reportedly told the clerk. Police officers arrived less than 10 minutes later. Andrew returned with them. 3 patrol units responded. According to the recording, he never wanted to go back inside. But he also couldn't explain why. Part of him already knew. They weren't going to find anyone. The apartment door was still locked exactly as Andrew had left it. Nothing appeared disturbed. The officers searched every room: closets, under the beds, the bathroom, the small storage room near the kitchen. Nothing. No signs of forced entry. No broken windows. No footprints. No evidence that anyone besides Andrew had entered the apartment. Then one of the officers called from the bathroom. "The shower's dry." Andrew frowned. "What? There hasn't been any water running." He walked to the doorway. The bathroom was spotless. The shower curtain hung neatly in place. The faucet was completely dry. Even stranger. The mirror showed no condensation, as though hot water hadn't been used for hours. Andrew stared silently at the floor. "I heard it." His voice on the recording became noticeably weaker. "I know I heard it." The officers exchanged brief glances. One suggested exhaustion, another mentioned alcohol. Neither explanation surprised Andrew. He admitted both were possible. Until one of the officers noticed something unusual. Ryan's bedroom door. It was open. Inside, everything appeared untouched, except for one object lying neatly in the center of the bed. Ryan's cell phone. The same phone Andrew had seen on the kitchen counter only minutes earlier. One officer picked it up. "The battery's dead." Andrew didn't answer. He couldn't. Because he was absolutely certain. He had seen that same phone in the kitchen, not 10 minutes earlier. The recording became almost completely silent. For nearly 20 seconds, only Andrew's breathing could be heard. Then, very quietly, he spoke again. "I thought it was over. I was wrong. I brought something home with me." And somewhere behind his voice, almost too quietly to notice, the unmistakable sound of running water began again. The recording continued for another few seconds. Andrew sounded exhausted, not frightened anymore, just defeated. "I tried telling myself it was over. I stopped talking about it. I even convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing. I went back to work. I saw my friends. I slept. Eventually, life felt normal again." A long silence followed. Then he whispered something that investigators later described as the most disturbing sentence in the entire recording. But it didn't stay in the apartment. According to Andrew, the first strange incidents began only a few days later, always small, always easy to dismiss. He would wake during the night because he thought he heard the shower running. He'd check. Nothing. Sometimes he'd catch movement reflected in dark television screens or in windows after sunset. Whenever he turned around, there was never anyone there. He stopped sleeping well. Then he noticed something else. no matter where he spent the night, hotel rooms, friends' apartments, even his parents' house. The bathroom door was never completely closed in the morning. Always just slightly open. At first he blamed himself, until one night he wedged a chair beneath the handle before going to bed. When he woke, the chair was exactly where he had left it. The door was still standing open. He never figured out how. Andrew admitted he eventually sought professional help. Doctors suggested stress, sleep deprivation, anxiety. One therapist believed he was experiencing post-traumatic hallucinations after an episode of alcohol-related panic. Andrew wanted to believe them. He truly did, because every explanation sounded better than the alternative. Then everything changed again. He checked into a hotel while traveling for work. A small business hotel. Nothing unusual. His room number, 312. He laughed when he first saw it. Coincidence. Nothing more. That evening he showered, answered a few emails, and fell asleep while watching television. At exactly 3:24 a.m., he woke to the unmistakable sound of running water coming from the bathroom. His first thought was simple. He must have forgotten to turn the faucet off completely. Half asleep, he reached toward the bedside lamp. It wouldn't turn on. Neither would the television. The room was dark except for one source of light. His cell phone. It lay on the nightstand. Its screen had turned on by itself. A voice memo application was open. Recording. The timer continued counting upward. No one had started it. Andrew picked up the phone. The recording was already nearly 3 minutes long. He pressed stop, then play. At first, he heard only himself sleeping. Then, very softly, another sound, running water, followed by slow footsteps, not inside the bathroom, inside the hotel room, moving around the bed, stopping beside him. He listened in complete silence. Then, a voice, barely louder than a whisper. "So, you finally heard me." The recording ended. Andrew checked out before sunrise. According to hotel staff, he left everything behind. His suitcase, his clothes, his wallet, even his room key. Only one object remained neatly placed in the center of the bed. His cell phone, still plugged into the charger, still unlocked, displaying one audio file. The official hotel records confirm only part of what happened next. Housekeeper Megan Carter entered room 312 shortly after 1 o'clock that afternoon. She later stated the room appeared untouched. No personal belongings, no signs of a guest, only the phone. Management searched the building. Security footage showed Andrew entering the hotel the previous evening. No camera ever recorded him leaving. Police reviewed every hallway camera, every elevator recording, every emergency exit. Nothing. There was no evidence that anyone had entered or exited room 312 after midnight. The phone itself disappeared several days later while being held with other unclaimed guest property. No officer ever signed it out. No employee admitted moving it. When investigators checked the storage cabinet, the shelf where it had been placed was empty. The only remaining evidence was a copy of the recording that one detective had transferred before the device vanished. Audio experts later confirmed that the file showed no signs of editing. However, they identified one detail no one had noticed before. During the final 23 seconds, beneath Andrew's voice, another recording could be heard. Extremely faint, almost impossible to isolate. It wasn't speech. It wasn't static. It sounded exactly like someone slowly turning the handle of a bathroom door from the inside. To this day, No official investigation has ever confirmed the events described in Andrew's recording. Hotel management acknowledged that a guest had checked into room 312. Housekeeping confirmed that a smartphone was later found inside the room. Beyond that, the facts become increasingly difficult to verify. There is no publicly available police report describing an unexplained disappearance. No confirmed evidence that the phone vanished from storage. No official statement explaining why room 312 was reportedly taken out of service for several months. Some former employees insist those events happened exactly as described. Others deny them completely. Like many unexplained cases, the details depend entirely on who you ask. There are, however, a few questions that have never been answered. If Andrew abandoned everything inside the room, how did no security camera capture him leaving? If he walked out carrying nothing, where did he go? And perhaps the strangest question of all, who created the recording? According to the audio file itself, Andrew was supposedly speaking after the events inside his apartment had already taken place. Yet if his account is true, the final recording inside the hotel would have been impossible for anyone else to recover, unless someone else was already inside room 312. Researchers who study reports involving allegedly haunted locations often point to psychological stress, sleep deprivation, or false memory formation as the most likely explanations. Hotels, unfamiliar surroundings, and exhaustion can create powerful feelings of disorientation, especially during the early hours of the morning. Those explanations are reasonable, perhaps even sufficient, but they leave one unsettling detail unresolved. Multiple hotel employees later claimed they could occasionally hear running water inside room 312, even when the room was officially vacant. Maintenance reportedly inspected the plumbing more than once. No mechanical fault was ever identified. Whether those accounts are accurate, or simply stories that grew over time, can no longer be determined. Today, room 312 is just another hotel room. Guests check in, guests check out. Most never notice anything unusual. But every so often, someone reportedly calls the front desk in the middle of the night with the same complaint. There's water running in my bathroom. When staff arrive, the room is empty. The shower is dry, and the only sound left behind at that time is silence. If you ever check into a hotel and discover a phone lying on the bed, already unlocked, with a single audio file waiting to be played, you may want to ask yourself one question before pressing play. What if the recording wasn't left for the previous guest? What if it was left for you?